A short time ago in a galaxy nearby, a podcast was made to inspire and entertain. Casual Space. Making space available, one story at a time. Your host with grace, Beth Mark.
Well, welcome back to Casual Space.
It's great to be back.
Hey, and happy birthday. If everyone is enjoying Mark and our conversation together, and you know him, you could really give him a birthday gift by enjoying the year science changed everything.
that is the best birthday gift.
That too, because it's so great.
I love it. I have to show you though. Look at the back of of one of the books.
Yeah.
So you read the copy at the very top in the black lettering.
In 1957, 60,000 scientists from 66 nations achieved the impossible. They erased political borders for 18 months to unlock Earth's greatest mysteries. It's time we do it again.
It's great, but the problem is it wasn't 60,000 scientists. It was only 6,000 scientists. So somewhere in the process of going to print, somebody, and it could have been me, I just don't know, but somehow or another, an extra zero, a surplus zero ended up. So it was 6,000, not 60,000.
Well, you know what? It gets to the point, and it's not often that an author is like, hey, look on the cover. There's a typo right there.
Well,
You're so humble, Mark.
The publishers are working to address it, so it's going to be addressed. So I'm not letting it bother me. And like I said, it could easily have been me who made the mistake. So
nor should you. No, but let's talk about it, because people did come together to do this incredible thing. And by the way, I wrote about it. I'm putting out a newsletter, and I tagged you as the highlight of the book I'm reading, obviously.
Oh.
So I want everyone to discover this, because I really think that it's going to showcase, and we're going to talk about it right now. If this is possible, what else is possible? But let's start by discovering how you came into writing this book. What was the idea behind taking on this project?
It was a very, very long sequence of events. I mean, it took place over literally decades. That's not really an exaggeration. It started for me, this whole book thing about IGY started for me in 1982 when a musician named Donald Fagen from Steely Dan had a hit song out called IGY. And it was this really catchy little ditty. I won't sing it to you, because if I did, it's one of those songs. It's one of those songs that once it gets lodged in your brain, you can't get rid of it. But it's a really sweet song, though. So I have mixed feelings. But so he had this hit song, 1982, and it's all about this utopia this utopian dream world that we're all going to be living in sometime soon. And it's just he just describes it with these incredible lyrics. Like he talks about being able to go from New York to London by rail, or traveling undersea by rail in New York to Paris in 90 minutes. He talks about trusting machines to make big decisions programmed by fellas with compassion and vision. Great lyrics. And the best lyric, my favorite lyric from that song of all is, he sings, "There'll be spandex jackets for everyone."
No.
That's what the future is going to be, according to this song. So, I enjoyed the song. I still do. It still pops up like, on oldie stations and stuff. So I do still love the song, but he was a little bit off the mark. We haven't quite reached his vision of utopia yet, but we are trying. But so that's how this whole thing started, because that's how I got introduced to IGY. Was from that song. Fast forward to about 10 years ago, when I'm writing my first book about Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who's a very accomplished astronomer who also was a UFO investigator. But researching his career, I came across IGY again. And I was like, oh, there's that thing. There's that thing that song was about. I wonder how it fits into Hynek's story. And it turns out that at the end of World War II, through Operation Paperclip, I believe it was called, we ended up inheriting like 70 rockets from Nazi Germany and something like 120 rocket scientists. So all of a sudden, we have this rocket program basically falling into our laps. And IGY came up again because IGY took part in using those 70 rockets for scientific research. And Dr. Hynek was part of that because he helped determine which payloads to put into the satellites that we were going to be launching.
Mm.
Okay. So that's the next step. And then, so I kept thinking, okay, IGY, 6,000 scientists from around the world all joined forces to study some of the greatest mysteries of the Earth. What causes the aurora borealis? How deep are the oceans? How deep is the ice in Antarctica? All these things that we did not know as recent as 1957. So once again, I'm introduced to IGY in an unexpected way. And I start thinking, this is really fascinating. This was a huge event. And I think there's a really cool story to be told there. I didn't know what my angle would be, but I always had it in the back of my mind, especially after writing this stuff about J. Allen Hynek. I had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to do something with that story. I wanted to tell a story about IGY. So I'm thinking about it and thinking, okay, I'm going to start this. This is like 2 years ago. And I'm having coffee with a friend, my friend Steve, a couple of years older than me, super guy. And he asks me, so, what's your latest writing project? And I thought, aha, he's fallen into my trap. Yeah, pretty much. And so I kind of leaned back in my chair at the coffee shop and I thought, okay, he's not going to know what I'm talking about, but I'll give it a shot. So I just said, have you ever heard of something called IGY? And I expected him to just be like, no, what's that? But instead, he totally surprised me. He gets this really far off look in his eyes and he says, IGY, International Geophysical Year. He goes, yeah, I remember that from grade school. He said, I saw it in the Weekly Reader. And I was just like, what? First of all, it's amazing that you immediately came up with the name International Geophysical Year from all those decades ago. But second of all, my weekly reader, seriously? For
I
those
like
of us,
Steve.
yeah, for those of us of a certain age, I'll put it that way, my weekly reader, sometimes it was just called Weekly Reader, um, was a weekly news magazine. A little, as I remember, it was like a little 4-page, two-color news magazine that was distributed like to every grade school kid in the land.
Right.
And it was like I said, it was a news magazine. It was like like an early version of 60 Minutes or something, where they would just talk about what's going on in the world of politics or in science in this case. So after Steve came out with that, with that basically blurted out International Geophysical Year and Weekly Reader, I was like, yes, I'm definitely going to write this book. I'm going to write it. I still wasn't 100% sure what my angle would be, but it actually came to me pretty quickly after that. I just thought I was reading something about the climate crisis and climate science, and I started thinking, okay, wait a minute. IGY had 6,000 scientists all around the world, drop what they were doing, join forces to solve these essential problems of life on Earth. If they could do that back in 1957, couldn't the scientists of the world do that again today to deal with
Mhm.
the climate crisis? So I latched onto that, and that was going to be my angle for the book. Of course, I had no idea if that was actually a real thing or not. If I was just being kind of naive and thinking that thinking that something that massive could be done again, was I just being stupid? Was I being naive? Well, in a way I was, but it turns out most of the scientists I ended up talking to, when I would ask them about that, they'd say, "Oh, no, no, no. You're not being naive at all. This is a real thing and it needs to be talked about." So
Yeah.
that's the long, long path from the initial inspiration with that song up to when I started writing the book about a year ago. So
Yeah. I like that you included it in the book. So that was my when a book really starts, You want it to grab your interest so that you get invested and say yes to reading it all the way through. I was sitting right alongside you having that coffee. And when Steve said weekly reader, and I was like, oh, yeah, I was right there. And I'm so glad that you have friends like this that are
Yeah.
asking you these questions and then curiously stepping alongside you to go along this journey. And we get to today, too. There were a lot of different branches of science, as you had
Mhm.
mentioned, all these 6,000 scientists, everyone from meteorology to oceanography. There were 14, you said in the book. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, when the planning began for IGY, and I'll talk a little bit about how that happened in a minute, but as the plans were starting to develop, it was necessary almost immediately to categorize, to spell out exactly what was going to be addressed during IGY. And the committee that was directing this came up with a list of 14 fields of science that they considered essential for IGY. And I have them bookmarked in my book here. So 14 scientists referred to as reporters were chosen to oversee and coordinate research and exploration efforts in the following 14 areas of inquiry: world days and communications, rockets and satellites, meteorology, geomagnetism, aurora and air glow, one of my favorites,
Mm.
ionosphere, solar activity, cosmic rays, longitudes and latitudes, glaciology, oceanography, seismology, gravity measurements, and last but not least, nuclear radiation. So that's our list of 14. Ideally, I would have had 14 chapters in the book dealing with each of those.
Oh,
But
sure.
space constraints just wouldn't allow it. I had to sort of pick my top 10 or 11 that I thought were the most interesting. So that's how that all played out. And I can also eventually that list of 14 was narrowed down even more to Antarctica, the Arctic, outer space, the equator, and three pole to pole meridians: one through Europe and Africa, one through the Americas, and one through Asia and Australia.
And
So
was
that's
that
how this,
because we lacked data in those areas?
it was actually, we had too much data and we had no way to handle it all. That's
Ah,
my understanding of it, is that there was no problem collecting. Well, I shouldn't say that. There wasn't no problem. There were certainly hindrances. In some cases, a particular thing couldn't be studied because we hadn't yet invented a way to study it.
I
Okay,
see.
so IGY is all about measuring things, imaging things, and we couldn't always do that because, like I say, we sometimes nobody had invented the machine yet that could actually record this.
Mm.
It's really pretty fascinating.
It is. I love that chapter that you talk about the tools. And people had to, once you narrowed down, like, what are we going to study for this international year? Now, how are we going to measure it? Because you have one way, and you talked about this in the book, that people brought different tools to the
Mm-hmm.
table. I'm figuratively different tools, and some literally, like, well, we use this system and you use that system, we use
Uh-huh.
that tool and you have that tool. So all of this had to be decided because it wasn't just wanting to have the data, but how the data was getting collected and how that was going to be, how those tools were going to be used universally had to be decided. Tough decisions.
Yeah, very tough decisions, and I have to say that the like 99% of the time in the planning stages, everyone behaved themselves. All of these seriously, all of these scientists, with rare exceptions, all of these scientists believed so fervently in what they were doing, and it gave them such a sense of purpose that they were willing to, as you were describing, they were willing to share. They were willing to share data. They were willing to share machinery. They were willing to share tools and calibration instruments and cameras and God knows what all. Um, yeah. Okay, I'm losing my thread here
I
for a
can't
second.
even imagine 6,000 Northwesterners, Midwesterners deciding, are we going to shovel? Or are we going to snowplow? Well, let's all decide we're going to snowplow. Okay, well, yours is too loud than mine, and mine's much more compact, and mine's electric, and yours is gas. I don't even know how. Even with the best intention, if we could do this today.
Yeah. The one exception, and I spend a lot of time talking about it in the book, the one exception was um, the rocketry and satellite programs,
Oh, yes.
specifically of the United States and the USSR, the Soviet Union.
Let's talk about that.
Because, yeah, so from the outset with IGY, in the early planning stages, it was agreed on unanimously by everyone involved that IGY had to culminate in the launching of an artificial orbiting satellite, something that had never been done before. Nobody knew if it could be done. A lot of people believed it could be done, but nobody knew for certain. So it became imperative. Every country to join IGY had to promise to openly share all their data with not just with anyone else in IGY, but with any scientist anywhere. They were all pledging to make whatever their research data showed them, all that data was going to be preserved and it was going to be shared equally with people, except where the rocketry program was concerned, because the USSR was very, very cagey. They did not always want to share their information.
No.
I'm not going to say it was an absolute where they never shared anything, but there were certain things they didn't share, such as if each country was going to launch an artificial satellite into space, into orbit, there would have to be some way to record the data that they're gathering and to return it to Earth, right?
Mm.
Well, to do that uniformly between the two countries, they had to agree on whatever radio frequency they were going to use for signaling and transmitting. And the Soviets absolutely would not reveal which frequency they were using. And it drove the US rocket scientists nuts because they knew that the Russians must know something, but they just were so determined not to talk about it. And there's a funny moment that I record in the book where when the US scientists would confront the USSR scientists and say, "Hey, we don't think you're being entirely forthcoming with your findings and things." And the Soviet scientists would just say, "Well, we think if we disclose data prematurely, it sounds like we're bragging, and we don't want to brag." So that was their MO, I guess you could call it. That was how they handled things.
That's funny.
Um,
Well,
oh
something
well.
I learned through the book is how Sputnik was accepted by the US and maybe not so much startled. You want to touch upon that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean this was hearsay for me, so I didn't want to say this is absolutely what happened. But in the course of my research, I did interview a gentleman, a scientist, who had inside information. Now all of us, I'm sure, are at least aware that when the Russians launched Sputnik in October of 1957, they leapfrogged ahead of us. Everybody around the world, except for the Russians, thought that we were in the lead and we were going to get our satellite up there first. The Russians actually got theirs up there first. So it just kind of shook the Earth to its core. Um, oh, gosh, another memory lapse. So just repeat your question, then I'll continue.
Yeah, he said, I believe, if I remember
Oh,
correctly in the book, that he said, nope, it was expected. And it was this
yeah.
theme that runs throughout your bookmark that it was a give and take. It was like, nope, we were aware and we
Mhm.
allowed it to go first in the name of science and
Right.
getting first into space.
Yeah.
Was that correct?
Yes, that is correct. But first, I want to go back to what I just forgot before.
Please.
And that was one of the stipulations or rules or whatever you want to call them of IGY was that with these rocketry programs, they actually had to record misfires. They had to record rockets that blew up on the launch pad. Even the unsuccessful rocket launches all had to be recorded and transmitted to the central authority that controlled all the data for the program. And the Soviets absolutely did not want to share any information about misfiring rockets. I thought that was kind of amusing. And so they just didn't. They
So
just
they did
didn't.
it right.
They didn't say a word, and they I guess got away with it. But back to the earlier story though about this whole issue of Sputnik being the first successful orbital satellite in October of 1957, and how we came in second place. It was always termed in those terms of a race in
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
Um, and so what happened was I heard this story from a gentleman who I believe is a very reliable source of information. And he said, you know what? We could have beaten the Soviets into space. We had a satellite and a rocket ready to go. We could have been the first. We could have trumped anything that the USR was planning to do, but we didn't. And he said, this guy told me, he said, I had to find out why. And it took him quite a while to sort of go through this trail of breadcrumbs to find out if this, first of all, if this story was true. And second of all, if it, did it really happen that way? Well, according to him, yes, it was true. There was a rocket and a satellite ready to go before Sputnik was launched. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And the reason we didn't do that, the reason we did not go down that route and leapfrog ahead of the Soviets was that President Eisenhower believed that space was for everyone. And he wanted to ensure that space, if it was going to be used in any way, it would be used in a good, positive, peaceful manner. So the idea that the U.S. would trigger some sort of competition with the USSR with getting satellites in orbit just did not sit well with President Eisenhower. So according to this story that I heard, according to this story, we made this huge monumental decision that, only a handful of people apparently know about.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's real kind of cloak and dagger stuff. Like, wow,
I
they
love it.
really pulled, they
Well, it's
really
not the
pulled a
first
fast
time
one.
you've shared Cloak and Dagger with us. I mean, I loved
That's true.
your Project Blue Book, a J. Anna Lynn Hynek book it was so such another great piece, and still
Thank you.
unpacking that to this day. I love that you have this whisper throughout your career of these reoccurring themes. And I think we're seeing them here in the year science changed everything as well,
Uh,
where the IGY was speaking to you and what about it was intriguing. And then you sit with these scientists, and after time, they share and reflect upon the challenges. And there were many. So we talked about the different types of systems and measurements that we had to be decided. We talked about a number of types of things we would be measuring and looking for, and you mentioned those. I want to touch just a little bit on two more things: politics,
mm,
and then what happens when we actually collect the data. Where did it all go? Who
uh,
stored it? Where is it today? How do we reference it? What did we
yeah.
find? So let's talk politics first, and then let's go into where the data eventually would land.
Okay. Sounds good.
So when it came to politics,
Well,
I mean, we just touched a little bit upon Russia,
right.
US. And
Yeah.
by the way, here's something: your book constantly goes through what lays the groundwork, I believe, for a lot of case studies today. Right now, we're operating in what's called the Artemis Accords, where we're also stepping into how we're going to
Oh.
discover the moon
Uh-huh.
and materials and revisit our sustainability on the moon. But
Uh-huh.
we agree as a number of countries that we're signing through the Artemis Accords that when we go, we're going to be very forthright and announce what we're doing there and where we're going on the planet. So we don't just, so
Uh-huh.
people are aware, other countries are aware
Uh-huh.
of what we're doing and where we are, so that if we're on this part of the moon, you get to go play on that part of the moon. Thus
Uh-huh.
the Artemis Accords,
Uh-huh.
not unlike what happened in 1957 with countries having to work together to say, let's all study this as well as
Yeah.
that. So the politics, though, did get a little sketchy, didn't they? Sometimes a little hairy
Well,
when you said 99% played nice, right?
yeah, and I'll get to that in a second, but I just want to comment on what you were just saying about the Artemis Accords. Is that what it's called? The
Yeah,
Artemis
yeah.
Accords. What the model for that was the Antarctic Treaty, which came about as a direct result of the International Geophysical Year. And I can
There it
talk about
is.
that now, or we can talk about that later. I know you
Please,
want to know
no,
about the
go,
politics.
please. Fantastic
Okay.
segue.
Well, after I don't know if I mentioned that the International Geophysical Year actually turned out to be 18 months. They needed the extra 6 months to gather additional data.
60,000, 60,000,
Yeah,
12
yeah.
months, 18 months.
Right. Oh my gosh. Um, so all of the countries that had bases in Antarctica agreed to the peaceful use of the continent. Nobody would be allowed to own it. Nobody would be allowed to do anything with any military implications uh, involving the Antarctic. And it was, according to one of the people I used as a source in a book written years ago, basically said this is the first time the U.S. and the USSR have ever agreed to anything.
Wow.
And I just want to read because the Antarctic Treaty, it was such an important part of IGY. It's sort of like the lead into IGY was the rocketry stuff, the spectacular rocketry stuff. And sort of the end chapter, the final chapter wrapping things up turns out to be about the Antarctic Treaty, which came about a year after IGY ended. All of these countries, and I just want to read the list. Um, oh, hang on, different page. Okay. First of all, the countries that took part in negotiating in the Antarctic Treaty, and these are the countries that had permanent bases in Antarctica. Some of them still do have permanent bases.
Okay.
The Conference on Antarctica was initiated by the United States in the waning months of IGY, attended by representatives of the 12 countries that had cooperated on IGY research in Antarctica. Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, the French Republic, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, the Union of South Africa, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, which we've been talking about, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the United States of America. So all of these people got together, and here's what I'm just going to read one more excerpt, if you don't mind.
Please.
I don't want this to be too much about me reading things. So, Article 1 of the treaty, very simple and straightforward. Number 1, Antarctica shall be used for peaceful purposes only. There shall be prohibited inter alia any measures of a military nature, such as the establishment of military bases and fortifications, the carrying out of military maneuvers, as well as the testing of any type of weapons. Number 2, the present treaty shall not prevent the use of military personnel or equipment for scientific research or for any other peaceful purpose. So military people and hardware were allowed in Antarctica, but only for peaceful purposes. So that is Article 1 of the Antarctic Treaty, and it has been adhered to rigidly ever since 1958 when it was first drawn up. And basically they just, all of the Antarctic folks were like, this has been working really well. We've gotten immense amounts of data from Antarctica. And it turns out Antarctica is actually pivotal to a whole bunch of areas of science that I wasn't even aware of. So the general consensus was this has been working for the last 18 months. Let's keep it going and let's make it permanent and let's pledge to do this. So that's what happened. So it's a pretty amazing thing. And I can tell you a personal anecdote concerning the Antarctic Treaty. About 10 years ago, my dad took me and my siblings on a Antarctic cruise. And one of the first things they told us as we set out for Antarctica was, we cannot approach any animals within like 6 feet. You can't approach them. That's actually part of the Antarctic Treaty. But there's a funny little twist. If an Antarctic animal approaches you closer than 6 feet, that's cool. The animals, the penguins and the sea lions, they are not bound by the treaty. Okay. They can do whatever they want. So, it's kind of interesting. So you're walking around on this island and you're in the middle of a rookery and there are mama penguins like everywhere hatching their eggs. And it's really hard to find a place where you're not gonna be,
Yeah.
too close for comfort. So that was a really fascinating thing to me, was that
Wow.
the effect of the treaty. Yeah.
Glad we still do that. Places like the Galapagos and in the Arctic
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it's sacred. We are
Uh-huh.
not to let's destroy everything we touch, right?
Yeah.
And let's let them come to us. I love
Yeah.
that. N
I
not polar bears per se, but maybe everyone else.
I heard a story on this tour, and I can't remember. It must have come from one of the tour guides. Told a story about how a woman once sat down cross-legged on the rocks to watch the penguins, and a penguin supposedly came waddling up to this woman and hopped into her lap. And then it fell asleep. So she was stuck, because if the penguin were to wake up and hop out on its own, that's fine. But if she tried to push the penguin out of her lap or
No.
wake it up, she would literally be in violation of the treaty. Like I said, I don't know if this is a true story or not, but it's a great story and I love telling it.
It's a great story. Penguins on your lap sounds like a really nice detox.
I know. That would be so relaxing to have a penguin taking a nap in your lap. It's great. I
Would.
love
Really
penguins are the
would.
greatest animals in the world. I just got to say.
So now we have the data. What do we do? And where does it go? And how does it used and applied? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, gladly, because I was also very fascinated by this aspect of it. Because, yeah, these 14 areas of study we've talked about going on simultaneously all around the globe. And think of this, one of the rationales for IGY was one scientist working alone, studying, say, the sun, can see the sun for part of the day, but that's it. If you have scientists all over the world, all looking at the sun at the same time, the amount of data you're collecting just explodes exponentially, right? And that was one of the primary purposes of IGY was to have that. They call it, the word is synoptic. I had to look that up. These synoptic observations worldwide, all coordinated at the same time. So yes, it produces an immense amount of data. The data has to be saved, it has to be preserved, it has to be protected. And it really came home for the IGY people when they saw that um, there had been an international polar year in the 1930s, and during that event they had also accumulated a huge mountain of data. It had been protected, but it turned out at the aftermath of World War II that much, if not all, of that data from the polar year had been destroyed or lost in the aftermath of World War II. Nobody wanted that to happen with the IGY, needless to say. So they put together this really ingenious plan of they put together a system of what they called world data centers. And these were all over the globe. The primary ones, of course, were in the United States and the Soviet Union, but every other country participating in IGY also hosted their own data center. Now the two giant centers in the US and Soviet Union, they covered all fields of science. The smaller data centers scattered about in, Japan and the UK and Spain and Argentina, they would concentrate on one field of science, maybe two. The point of that was that if anything happened to any one data center to put it under threat or under loss of their prized data, there would be a backup. There would be at least one or two other data centers in different parts of the world for a backup. So I'm learning about this from the woman who's actually like overseeing our data program, and uh, yeah.
This
So
is back before the day of internet where there is
yeah,
no backup. It's a
yeah,
physical location.
yeah. So what they did was they made the data available to any like legitimate scientific concern, and it was free. The only thing they charged was for the copier paper and
Aw,
the toner. Yeah, it's and the postage to send the data back to whoever was requesting it. I thought that
as
was
it should be.
it's kind of charming. It's like, oh,
Yes.
yes, here's 25 cents for this Xerox you're going to make for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So now that kind of brings us into the big question. Um, was it worth it? Did
Uh,
it change the way we discover science, use science, assist each other in discovering things about our world? What was your opinion after you finished the book?
Absolutely. I can give a couple of examples of how successful it was. One was we were just talking about the data collection, the world data centers. When I was interviewing the woman who oversees our data centers, and she's explaining this whole system of backups and how there are at least two or three backups for every field of knowledge here. And I said, has that been necessary anytime recently? Have we needed to protect that data anytime recently? And she just immediately said, "Oh, look what's happening in Ukraine." But oh yeah. So
Mm.
it's happening right now. This data is fragile and it is sometimes under threat. But yes, IGY created this system to capture and maintain data for everyone in the world to use. So there's first example. Second example, right from the outset, education was always going to be a big part of IGY. They didn't want people having like the experience you're talking about of like not knowing what was happening, and it's literally so close to home, and
Yeah.
yet we have no idea it's happening. The people organizing and running IGY didn't want that to happen. So education was a huge part of it. They funded films. There was the Ford Foundation funded a series of short films that were distributed, again, to like my weekly reader, they were
Uh-huh.
distributed to schools and interested parties all around the US and actually all around the world. The films were redubbed in several different languages. They're my favorite, and I wish I could have illustrated this in the book, but we couldn't figure out a way to reproduce the image in a way that would be legible. But there was a series of 6 really beautiful posters that were made specifically for teachers to pin them up on their bulletin boards in their classrooms, right? So, and each of these 6 posters depicted something like space, oceans, and but in very unusual ways. There, in each of these posters, there would be a line drawing of an ancient god or goddess that sort of had some sort of connection to that particular field of science. I'm not going to think of any at the moment, but really just a determined and committed dedication to letting everybody know what was going on. Okay, sharing all knowledge freely and openly.
Mm.
Um, does that answer your question? I'm not sure if
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. I'm
covering
thinking
exactly
of
what you.
like Neptune, like, the god of the sea or something, or king of the sea. And then what we're discovering, which is really cool to combine the story, the mythical story
Mhm,
that we are maybe told or discover as kids, because stories sit with us, of
mhm,
course. And then to follow it or mirror it against the science that we're learning at the time.
mhm.
That's pretty phenomenal. That's a great
Yeah.
campaign. I love some of I'm thinking out loud of when I was in school, like those Walt Disney. And now join us at Yellowstone, where our national park, like, and it was
Yeah.
like that beautiful voiceover with some cute
Uh-huh.
animals. But for those of us, honestly, in the seats in fourth grade, second grade, who got to go to Yellowstone? No one I know. No kids from the Midwest were going to Yellowstone. So that video series really introduced us to this. And the idea and the awe of a national park was just
Yeah.
so alluring because of those videos and those little
Uh-huh.
movie clips. So if that's what came out of IGY, wow, because the
Yeah.
part about education and the repetitiveness of the data centers, I think people just don't realize that science doesn't have an agenda. We're all
Mm.
curious humans. We all want
Yeah.
to learn about the world we live in and why we're here and what's happening around us. And the fact that we shared it so openly.
Uh-huh.
This is a really great part of the book. It's probably one of my
Thank you.
favorites. Whether or
Oh, well,
not
thank
it's
you.
true, which I'm not sure. I'm not sure, Mark, that we let the Russians go
I,
first with the Sputnik. But
I am far from convinced. Believe me, I'm in the same boat. Back to those posters, though, there was one thing I wanted to mention. So, in addition to the line drawings of the gods and goddesses, each one of these posters would also have a quote from some classical author or thinker or scientist. And there's one in particular for the space poster, and I wish I could think of it now, but it's this very famous quote about how man's reach should out. Oh God, I'm going to embarrass myself now because I can't
mm,
remember how to.
was it from like von Braun or from the Bible or
Oh my
from?
gosh,
I wonder if it was in, if I can find it and help you out here. Let me see. Was it
man's
in the
grasp
book?
should exceed. No, man's. Oh God, this is embarrassing. I should have looked this up, but I didn't even think this would come up in the conversation. But I was impressed by the choice of quotes. I found it very, very inspiring.
Oh, well, I'm looking. Maybe I can find it.
Oh,
Maybe I can
okay.
find it. The Year of the Sun, The World in Space, the attempt to find the secret of these spots that has gone on for a century. I'm in the chapter on the sun. Maybe it was on the chapter of the education and outreach, though.
Yeah.
I used to have in my office, I no longer do, and people loved it. I should put them back up. But NASA did a campaign of just the different places in the solar system to go, and they were like a retro 70s throwback. So they had those colors, and it said like, you know, farm on Mars and go to the oceans of Enceladus. And they were so cool. Commissioned by NASA, an artist to produce that. And it really was, people wrote from all over the world to ask NASA for those posters.
I
So
believe it.
I'm glad I had them. I should put them back
Uh,
up. Did you find it?
Well, I'm finding all the other five, which
Right,
is
of course. That's how
which
it
is
goes.
really frustrating. Earth, oceans, that one I can't even read. Earth again. We got, yeah, boy, I'm sorry. I'm really letting myself down here,
That's
but
okay. No, I love the
hopefully one of your viewers, um, oh, wait, maybe this is it. Nope, guess not. Oh, well.
we're gonna
I
find it as soon as
through
we
space.
stop. As soon
Yeah,
as I hit
of
the
course.
right for real. Wait, Life magazine. Let's see. The year of the moon. I'm right here with you. I'm trying to find it here. I love the Life article in 1960 as well.
Oh, those articles were such a gold mine. I really enjoyed those. Seriously, I can find everything but
I know that's how it
the
goes,
space
right?
coaster. But at any
Let's
rate, the it had part of the design was this hand like reaching upward. So the quote had something about how man's grasp should exceed, or no, man's ambition should exceed his grasp, or something like that.
that's super cool. We got to find that. We got to find that.
Yeah. All right, let
I
me
love
try.
the photo on the back of the book jacket, Mark. Was that you in? Where was that taken? You're in the snow.
Oh, that's Antarctica.
Oh, cool. Was that when you were with your family?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I've only been
cool.
there once. It was
Cool.
amazing.
Did you
I think
think at the time you hadn't been working on this book at the time? So
no, no, not even close.
isn't that funny how it all circles back?
Yeah, yeah, it
So I
really is.
have to ask Mark, what's next?
It's funny you should ask that. And it just plays off of what you've been kind of talking about here about how these things sort of connect sometimes months or years after you've sort of forgotten about them. And this was pointed out to me recently by a colleague that
Steve?
what was it? No, 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 not Steve. Um, um, it was mentioned that my work lately has, so there's been sort of a theme, and maybe not lately. I think it goes back maybe all the way to the beginning when I was writing for Star Trek, that I've always dealt with scientific history and scientific events. They've always fascinated me. So alongside of writing this book, I was also writing a spec movie script. The spec script is something that you write on your own. You're not expecting anyone to buy it or pay you for it or anything. If
Okay.
you do, then that's great. But basically, the script is written on speculation. So this new script that I wrote most recently has to do with another real life scientific event. Only this one took place around the year 1600, and it involved two astronomers, Tycho Brahe and Johannes Kepler. And they were
Okay.
both of these men, and most people, if they know who Tycho Brahe is, they know it because he had a gold nose, because he had his nose sliced off in a duel. Yeah, right.
Bless you.
Already a good story.
Yeah.
So these two brilliant astronomers, they were both trying to solve the same problem. Stars were fixed in the night sky. Planets would wander, and not only would they wander, they would sometimes appear to change direction. Like they'd be going this way, then they'd be going back that way again, and nobody could figure out how that worked. It
Mm.
was this huge riddle of how the planet's orbits worked. And both of these scientists were absolutely determined. I mean, they both literally dedicated their lives to solving this mystery of why the stars or why the planets act this way. The trick about the story is Johannes Kepler was excellent at theorizing. He could see how things worked. Tycho Brahe was an incredible observer. He was a royal astronomer, and he spent 30 years on the roof of his castle charting the movements of specifically of all the planets, but specifically of Mars. Mars was always the focus of the research. The problem was Tycho Brahe didn't know how to use those numbers. Johannes Kepler did.
Mm.
Okay. And Johannes Kepler knew how to figure out how things worked, but he didn't have the numbers to prove it. So these two guys they each need each other to solve this mutual problem, but they hate each other. They absolutely despise each other. Um, Johannes Kepler is kind of this frail, sickly, introverted kind of misfit. Tycho Brahe, who he's working with, is this boisterous party guy. Um, and so the dynamic between these two characters appealed to me so much that I decided to write a script about it. And because there were so many humorous elements to the story, I decided to write it as a comedy. If I've been asked it when you write a script, you're always asked, well, what are your comps? What are the movies you can compare this to? So in the case of my script called The Eccentrics, it's uh, oh God, the movie about Mozart. Why am I not thinking of it?
I don't know. I don't know. But okay, there's
But
that one.
there's that one, and Knives Out, sort of a
Oh, Knives Out.
lighthearted murder Yeah, Knives Out.
Oh.
So Amadeus, that's the
Oh,
movie of Mozart.
Amadeus. Okay, okay.
So yeah, so my script, so I compare it to Amadeus meets Knives Out. So,
Interesting.
but again, it's about a moment. It's about this really profound moment in the history of science that literally changed everything about the way we
This is your
viewed
thing,
the
Mark.
universe.
This is it.
And
You find these gems in the J. Allen Hynek's book, in IGY, and now
well,
this script.
guess what? Johannes Kepler, who I was just talking about, was Alan Hynek's idol.
Really?
Yes, and it's easy to see why. Johannes Kepler had to work with this distasteful person, Tycho Brahe, in order to reach his goal of what he wanted to show with his research. Just like J. Allen Hynek, he had to stay with the Air Force, even though he hated it. The Air Force was a terrible, terrible boss for him. Hynek hated it, but he had to stick with it because that was the only way he could get access to all those thousands of Blue Book case reports.
But
So
you
Hynek's,
decided to do this as a comedy?
yeah,
A
yeah.
comedy.
There was
I
just
love
some
it.
about there was some about the gold nose, you know. I think what A-list actor would not want to play a guy with a gold nose? Come on, that's like that could make your career, right?
Yeah. It reminds me of Night at the Museum. The
You,
second one or third where
uh-huh.
his nose melts, the wax figure. Oh,
I
so
haven't seen
funny.
that. I haven't seen
It's
that
good.
one. I'll have to look
Yeah,
at it.
that's
All
funny.
right. I need to finish that story though. So the end result, though, was that Johannes Kepler, and this didn't happen. This happened later on, you know, as years progressed and his knowledge increased. Johannes Kepler ultimately came up with what are known as the three laws of planetary motion. Okay, so
Yes.
the first law is that planets do not orbit the sun in a circle; they orbit the sun in an ellipse, and they're FOCI. Is that pronounced foci?
Yes, I
Oh, it's
think
not
so.
foci. Okay. So yeah, it's not a circle, it's an ellipse. And that's why at times the planets seem to reverse course because we're catching up with them, basically, because of the shapes of our orbits. If they were
Mm.
perfect circles, that wouldn't happen. Everything would always be moving in the same direction all the time. But because they're ellipses, that doesn't happen. Things get out of whack, things get out of sync, and it looks as though one planet is moving ahead and then it's the next night it's moving behind.
Yeah.
So that was also part of the story was that all of this misadventure, and the movie turns into a murder mystery because Tycho Brahe, I know this isn't why we were talking today, but I'm enjoying telling you about
I'm enjoying listening about it.
it.
This is the movie I want to
So,
see.
well, me too, man. Um, but yeah, gosh, what was I going to say now?
Well,
Ah,
when we take liberties in historical fiction, is that what it's called now? When we write, when would you say
yeah, I think
you're
you can
writing
say that.
historical fiction?
Yeah.
It's based on real people and real
Mhm.
events, but the way they interact and perhaps the words they say is to be
Uh,
a bit liberal with what we are going to assume
yeah,
happened. I love that. And
yeah.
by the way, kids love that. I talk to my kids all the time, and that's the kind of books they want to read. Like,
Uh,
nobody likes being told, and nobody likes, by the way, being tested on
uh,
what happened at the battle of this on this
uh,
date and who, when you can get into a story and say, I think he would have said this, or I think they would have interacted this way.
uh,
Not only does a kid enjoy that more, but they can remember it. It stays with
Hmm.
them. They can envision walking through it and being
Uh-huh.
realistic with it, and they prefer
Yeah.
that every time. So
Oh, I totally
this
agree.
understanding how we discovered how planets worked and how the laws of physics were discovered through Kepler would be way more fun in a movie with some fun characters than just reading it from a book straight. I think I'd prefer that.
Well, there was one part of writing the script that it was a little bit of a struggle at first, but I think I made the right call, and that is that Johannes Kepler's wife, Barbara, um, is only there are many, many things written about Johannes Kepler. Many, many documents from when he was alive. Okay, there's lots of material on Kepler's life and his work. His wife Barbara, there only exists one letter from Johannes Kepler to a colleague. And in that one letter, he mentions something about how his wife is kind of getting on his nerves. That she's his wife is for I don't know the reasons, but for some reason his wife has been very hard to deal with lately. And that's the only place Barbara is ever mentioned. So when I get to what I want to do with Barbara, I'm like, huh, this is based on one casual mention in one letter that does not necessarily mean anything because there's only one of them. It's a, if there were like 20 letters of Kepler complaining about his wife, then
Then she comes alive, right?
I would
She has
have
a
to go with that.
personality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But it's one letter and it's not even something she wrote. It's something that he wrote, or something that he said. So I thought, okay, as far as I'm concerned, Barbara is like fair game. I can create her character and it'll be just as legitimate as anything anybody else wants to present.
Sure. Sure.
So that was kind of as a writer, that was kind of this freeing moment. It's like, oh, I don't have to do it this way. I can do it this other way. I can put my stamp on it. So that's how it all worked.
All these stories, Mark, that you find where people are placed as the main character in science-based environments and
Uh-huh.
their mind changes, their perspective shifts.
Mhm.
It's so great that you keep discovering these stories and you get to share them with us through the books, through your
I love
scripts,
sharing
through
them.
your ideas. Yeah, that's your gift for
I
sure.
love sharing them.
And it's inspiring because how many of us can relate to having a terrible coworker, right? With Kepler and
Yes. Yeah.
how many of us
Yeah.
can how many of us can relate to having to do something for a year? Like how many I
Mhm.
just finished teaching us, for I'm teaching at a college
Oh, cool.
and when they graduated, it's like many people tell them this advice. This isn't going to be your forever job. Like go get your job. You're not going to be committed to it forever. You'll probably
Uh-huh.
do it for a year or 18
Uh-huh.
months, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
who can and even in my worst, when I look back at like the hardest jobs I had, they were about a year and then you move on. So that's
Uh-huh.
very relatable. We can
Yeah.
relate to people like J. Ellen Hynek, who's like, maybe these people who are seeing something really do see something. I'm
Mhm.
I'm going to not necessarily set out to prove that they don't see nothing, that whatever it is that they're seeing is something. I can't maybe say what, but I recognize. And it took him there was that, in his
Yeah.
character development that
Yeah.
happened. And this happens over and over again in your writings. And it's something I think we can all relate to and enjoy. So
I
it's
appreciate that.
always a pleasure to read them and to talk to you about them and to discover them with you. So when can people find this wonderful movie that we're going to enjoy about Kepler and
Oh,
the gold nose?
well, all I can say, I wish I could recite the second and third planet laws of planetary motion, but they get very complex and they're a little bit beyond me as far as how to describe them. But what you're to answer your question, all I can say at this moment is the script is in the hands of a person who is very influential in the film industry. So
Okay.
it's been in his hands for several months, and it turns out Amadeus is his favorite movie.
Oh,
He's always thought that there should be a movie made about Tycho Brahe. I'm like, dude, you're talking to the guy, the guy who's already done that. So that's kind of where we're at. So I can't really say any more than that because I don't know if anything is happening. I just know that it's in his hands. So
oh,
so the
exciting.
so the next step will be up to him. Yeah.
Okay. I look forward
But
to seeing it. So
the
right
thing is,
after Mission Impossible weekend, we'll get right on it.
right. And this kind, the funny thing is, I've gone through this process before in a really interesting, I'm going to date myself. About 20 years ago, I wrote a crop circle script, which also was a comedy. And for a while, Bill Paxton wanted to make the movie. He wanted to direct it. And it was kind of similar to the situation I'm in right now. It's like, hurry up and wait. Like, okay, that's
Yeah.
great, Bill, that you want to make this movie. So let's make it happen. Ultimately, it didn't happen, and that's a whole different story. But it was a very educational experience. So it's helped me to sort of remain patient with this
Sure.
with this
Let's hope.
news stories. Yeah, the way I pitched the new script is that it's the world's first toxic workplace, which always catches people's attention. I love it when I use that pitch line. People are like, "Oh, I want to know more." So that's been kind of
Didn't
fun.
have to work together. They just had to work against the findings of one another, right? Did they have to work, or is this in the script in TBT?
It's
TBT.
it's it's in the script.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think I mentioned. So Tycho Brahe was the royal astronomer of Denmark, I believe. So he had his own like personal observatory. It was basically a castle. Now there were no telescopes at that time. Okay, this is
All by
just before
eyesight.
Galileo, just before
Okay.
Galileo. So there are no telescopes, but he has just these sort of sighting instruments that he uses every night to track the motion of Mars and the other planets. Um, oh God, I lost my thread again. Yeah. So more to the point. So he's got this rooftop observatory from where he does his observations, and he invites Johannes Kepler. Johannes Kepler writes a book in which he theorizes about the planetary motions. He's got it all wrong, but the analysis is so well done that Tycho Brahe is like, I need to get that guy here to work with me because he knows what's going on. He's
This
wrong in
is
his
real.
book.
This is
This is
historically
this
accurate.
is historically accurate. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so Tycho Brahe officially invited Johannes Kepler and his family to move into the castle, move into the observatory, so that Kepler and Brahe could work together, comparing notes and synthesizing their knowledge in whatever way they did. So yeah,
Did they?
that's all part of the narrative. The story is
See,
mostly true.
I need to hear this. I need to look this up now and learn and obviously, let's make this happen because now I'm on the edge of my seat. And every time, every time I get to speak with you, Mark, and read from your work, I learned something. So thank you. And
Oh,
thank you
you're
today
welcome.
for joining us. This has been great. So when that happens, come back on the show and then walk us through it. I feel like we're already given the gift, like we've gotten the preview before
Well,
everyone
thank
gets
you.
to discover this part of the story.
I will be sure to let you know whatever develops, for sure.
Very good. Well, good. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Let's all enjoy and celebrate by getting your copy
Yes.
and sharing it. All right. Thanks, Mark. We'll see you soon.
I was going to say, and hopefully you will get a copy that doesn't say 60,000. It only says
Oh,
6.
gosh. Oh, you know what? I'll just put a Sharpie over it and we'll be just fine.
There you go. That's
My book club is getting this copy, so I will inform them. Yeah, they'll love it. They
I'm
will.
very flattered. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, give it some stars by rating and reviewing it on your podcast platform. Embrace the space. Casual space.